My opponent's asking me, can they start? Yes. Okay, here we go. This is the guy who guessed the magic number. I put out a number range, and he picked that magic number. So we have the Sicilian, and we have the Alpin. Let's do something different. I usually play d5 there, but to have a little variety, and by variety, I mean what exactly? I'm going to be winning this pawn. Right? If I take here, then we have e5 and then the recapture. What if I take e4 first? Let's see. Let's see. There's bishop d3, my knight runs away. And then there's a capture, but these two are doubled. Or you know what, maybe I say bishop d3, I go d5. Bishop takes, knight, pawn takes, I get the queen, I have the bishop pair. Let's go for that. I do open up this diagonal. There are some checking issues, but nothing that I should be fearing. Knight c6 to block is sufficient. So I'm ready to do what exactly? I'm ready to maybe just capture, run away, develop with knight c6. I'm not thinking about pawn c4. I don't care about making a one-move threat and kicking the bishop back and releasing pressure on d4 and allowing white to maybe have an attack against my king with two bishops breathing down my neck. So c4, I don't even give that a second thought. A second of my time, I should say. So e6, knight c6. I might want to do e6 because if I do knight c6 right away, it can maybe be kicked, but what's most pressing right now for white is what do you do about this pawn right here? I think just capture. And then do what next? I think with this, I'm going to end up being what? I'm going to be up how many pawns? Oh, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 7. My opponent has 6. My first thought is to play knight c6, and I don't see a reason not to do that. Let's get developed. Yeah, let's definitely get developed. Pawn takes, queen takes. If knight f3, if I could make a move that will defend my opponent's threat out of the opening and still facilitate my own development, I will be looking at those particular moves first. e5 does just that. It helps my bishop. So bishop c5 could be quite annoying as well. If c takes d, I capture with the pawn. Although, you know what, I don't have to. If pawn takes, I could take with my knight. My initial thought was that after c takes d, knight takes d, knight e5 could be played, but that's not the case because I would have available queen a5 and the knight is dead. Pawn takes, knight takes on e5, he's unprotected. My queen gives check, my queen takes the knight and then defends my knight on d4. I could take this knight and then this pawn. I don't want to go uncastled. If I give up my dark square bishop, I better have control over the dark squares in the center, and I do have that. Maybe I could pin the knight. I have the bishop pair. The X factor bishop that I have is the light square bishop, the unopposed bishop, so how can I put him to good use? How could I put pressure on my opponent's position with my light square bishop? I doubt that there's a better place to do that than g4. He is unprotected from that square, but I don't believe he is tactically vulnerable by being unprotected on here. Sometimes you'll see if there's a light square bishop bearing down an f7, there could be a sacrifice, king takes, and then a knight moving, unleashing a discovered attack on my bishop, but not the case here since there's no light square bishop for white putting pressure on f7. Bishop c5 is what I'm looking into next. If h3, do I maintain the pin? I believe so. He's still tactically vulnerable, maybe. g4 I play here. He's a fantastic defensive piece, and my opponent is pushing the bishop away. If g4 is played, he's breaking the pin, but white is weakening the king position. Should he go kingside and allowing my bishop to put direct pressure on this pawn? I could capture now. Notice how I don't have to recapture with my king, and I believe I do well to do that. Keep this pin. I do well to capture now because it benefits me. How exactly? Benefits me because my opponent's pawns are now split. This bishop can't move. As soon as pawn takes, the bishop is tied down to the defense of the knight. Bishop check. I don't believe that there's anything better here. And the last question that I really have for myself is it better to castle kingside or play king to e7? Oh, you know what else might be a thought? Taking the knight, because if the rook captures, I could give check and then take the knight because of the pin. So if I take the knight, pawn has to capture. Can I sneak my knight over here then? That would be a good home. Maybe f4 as well. Bishop here is a good thought as well. King e7. No, with still so many pieces on the board, I'm just going to tuck my king away. I'm not going to go in for that. Bishop takes knight. I think eventually I want to target this pawn. This pawn, even though these guys are split, he's stopping my knight from posting up on d4. How does my opponent make improvements? He has to be quite careful actually, because bishop b2, then I could take the knight and then post here, hitting the bishop. My rook becomes very active. Their knight is getting active now. Pressure on this pawn. Let me just watch over it. My bishop is also there to retreat and maybe keep a close eye on a2. You have to be careful, like if knight e3 and I do bishop here, if we have something like c4, this knight is intending to get to this square. Just drop this back, and if the pawn pushes, he is gone. Actually, I was thinking to, if c4, to take the knight and then jump into d4, but I'd actually just be winning some material. Pawn push, I take out the knight, and then I win a pawn. 40 seconds, I have a minute advantage. Rook here is also another thought. Alright, let me take. The knight has to run in reverse. Who's the poorest placed piece for me? My rook could be doing something on the d-file. My knight is the other one. Where would he like to be? Further advanced along this file, right here. Anything better? I like getting him here. Bishop is kind of stuck. Alright, I'm going to pinpoint this pawn. He's stuck too. He's stuck. He's stuck because of this. I could get this pawn, but the rook then comes over here. Let me just defend stuff. Now this is back on. Rook here. I could run away with my bishop. Actually, no, I could have done that sooner. My rook was there to defend my knight. What am I talking about? Tricky knight checks. Let's get out of any of that stuff. And let's put pressure on the knight that is in my position. And I think I just want to take him out, but actually there's no need to even do that. I'm stopping all the squares that he could maybe be going to. Let's just get him out of there. I have this square covered. 3 seconds. Just march my pawn. No time. Okay, good game, UVA fan. Let's back up and see if there's something to take away from this. And I'm sure there is. Right here, just play e5. e5, knight here, and d4. Switch the move order. This is what you want to get in. Some pawn structure with some e5, d4 structure. So just do e5. You drop that pawn, and now I don't see that there's going to be compensation for the material you've invested. What are some things to look for if you're going to be investing material? Do you have a lead in development? You don't. And there's no structural deficiencies. I guess that's another secondary thing to look into, but again, the primary thing in most cases out of the opening is if you're going to be investing pawns, any type of material, do you have a lead in development? And white doesn't. There's no lead in development. If anything, I have a lead in development. I'm able to get all my pieces out. So my suggestion is really coming back to this e5 move. Just meet the threat first on here. e5, knight here, and then this. Or there's even, I think, knight f3, bishop c4 stuff. But eventually, e5, pawn on e5, grab some space, follow up with d4 in short order within the next 2-3 moves. But again, knight f3, bishop c4, some other ideas. Again, you don't have compensation, at least I'm not seeing it, for having given up the material, having given up these pawns. There's structural defects as well that are some concern to white. These pawns being split in, well, 3 pawns actually. There's 3 isolated pawns. So not really the direction to go in. e5, consider that very early on. Okay.